Okay, so good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. I'm Joan Kang Shin, YLTSIG's Joint Publications Editor, and I'm thrilled to introduce today's panel discussion focused on a recent British Council Tunisia project co-delivered by ELT Consultants and TransformELT. Moderating the panel is Alan McKenzie, who is a founding director of TransformELT. And the 5 panelists are Yahya Bouneb, who is a teaching advisor appointed to a teacher education role for Tozur Governorate in southern Tunisia. Andrew Foster, who is the Senior Academic Manager for the British Council's Teaching for Success Tunisia project. Wendy Arnold, one of the founders of ELT Consultants, established in 2010. Maya Aranu, who is the project manager for the British Council's Teaching for Success Tunisia project. And last but not least, Deidre Nicholas, who is an international teaching and training consultant with nearly 30 years experience. So welcome, and over to you, Alan.
Thank you very much, Joan. We're going to talk about this large-scale change project that's happening in Tunisia this year. We believe it's probably one of the largest projects, certainly in English language teaching, that's happening in the world at the moment. It's certainly the largest project that either ELT Consultants or TransformELT have ever managed together. And we're delighted to be working with the British Council on it. So, Andrew, you seem to have disappeared. Just to start us off, Andrew, can you tell us what's the language development context in Tunisia?
Sure. Well, Tunisia is a very plurilingual country, really. The most common language is Tunisian Arabic, and that is the most widespread. It's influenced by Berber, by French since colonial times. And there's a lot of code switching in it. It's got differences in syntax and structure to Standard Arabic, and so Standard Arabic is the first language that comes in schools. Mm-hmm. I think it's fair to say that the north and the coast is more francophone, and of the francophone population, 40% are said to be occasional francophone. So you can see that Arabic is a lot more prevalent. But French does start at year 3 in schools. And so it's through French that people first meet the Roman alphabet and start making those associations between letters and sounds. And that was a very interesting context that all the trainers working in the summer were experiencing.
So you've mentioned that there are at least 4 languages there. There's the Berber, the Arabic, French, and English are happening within the state school system, are being used within the state school system.
Well, yeah, I mean, in schools, Standard Arabic is taught, and Tunisian Arabic is a mix of Arabic influenced by Berber, French, etc., etc. So that's like the home language of students.
Righty-ho. And has language teaching changed much in schools recently?
Well, the biggest change is probably that English has been introduced at younger and younger ages. So in the 70s, it was just 15-year-olds. If they were staying in schools for the next 3 years, they would get 3 years of English starting from 15. Until last year, English started from 11 years old. And then this year, it started with 9 to 10-year-olds in year 4 of primary. So it's been that people have found that English is more and more useful, and the Ministry of Education has responded to the demand for that by dropping the age that English starts at.
Mm. Yeah, that's a
As
trend
you
that's
can
happening
see from
all
the
over the
diagram,
world.
French is still in there first.
Sorry, can you say that again, Andrew?
Sorry, I just said, but as you can see there, French is still coming in just a year before English.
Mm. And am I right in thinking that French is the medium of instruction at higher levels of secondary?
Well, it is for some subjects, particularly for scientific subjects, yeah. So there is, currently in schools, there's no English medium instruction there. So what goes on in Tunisia is pretty different to, say, Algeria, where English medium instruction's at least coming in to universities quite a lot.
So we've got quite a complex language background there, language context there, and it's against this context that the wider Teaching for Success Tunisia program was designed, isn't it?
Yes, I mean it's not just it hasn't just been influenced by the school background, but also by the other issues in Tunisia, which still has quite high youth unemployment, and it's so that continues to be a problem for the country, but also some employers have reported that they find it hard to recruit for certain jobs because of difficulty in finding suitable candidates with skills like teamwork, problem solving, critical thinking and creativity. And also English is becoming relevant to more, but obviously not all jobs.
So it's not just the linguistic skills, it's soft skills and employability skills that are required for development.
No, yeah, it's very much also about core or transversal or 21st century skills. And they've been a focus of Tunisia's school reforms. They're a mainstay of the Curriculum General Tunisien, and also they're a major part of the British Council's work with schools. And so the logic for the project is that a better education that covers these aspects should lead to more employment, more prosperity, and thereby more security for the country, and more stability overall.
Great, thanks, Andrew. And Maya, are you there?
Sure. So, hi again, hi everyone. So over 2,500 English primary teachers attended this 5-day course, out of which 84% were women. The teachers came from all the 26 governorates in Tunisia. And for logistical and availability reasons, the training was held in 13 different training centers. The training was residential for the teachers who were far from home. I'm happy to say that out of we had 2,284 teachers who completed the British Council scorecard. It's a scorecard that we do after each training course. And 96.6% of the teachers reported that they felt more confident in teaching English to primary students because of attending this training course, while 97.2% of teachers agreed that this course gave them the opportunity to try out and reflect on ways of teaching that their primary learners should enjoy. This is for the teachers. We have the teaching advisors as well. Yahya is one of them. 54 teaching advisors participated in this course, and they made a significant contribution to the delivery of the program. 76%, if we go to the other slide. So yeah. So 70% of the teaching advisors, they have worked for 2 or more weeks out of the 6 weeks. So they had the chance to participate in more than 1 week, and this as well helped them in improving and advancing their skills. And 76% of the teaching advisors, they reported that according to their feedback, this participation in more than 2 weeks have raised their confidence in training the teachers afterwards.
Right. Now that sounds like quite a logistical feat. So there must have been a number of people involved.
So actually, it was the British Council with the Ministry of Education. We both led on the preparation and the logistical aspects of the program. So within the Ministry of Education in Tunisia, there's a Directorate of Professional Training. They led on organizing the teacher participants and inviting them. They led on finding the convenient training centers, coordinating with the center's directors, and coordinating as well the coordination of the teaching advisors. While with from our side as the British Council, we led on recruiting the international trainers, procuring their transfers, accommodation, everything regarding printing before the training and during the training, providing stationery, promotional material design, production, distribution to the different centers. I have a whole list.
Yeah.
So one of the major issues was the timing of the training, because it was summer. So teachers are usually on a summer holiday. So this meant that not all invited teachers were able to attend. So this is where we had to put more effort in coordinating with the Ministry of Education to see who are available and are interested in attending the training, and then doing calling them one by one and confirm their attendance and so on. Another challenge was I'm not gonna call it instability, political instability, because there was a recent, just 2 days before the start of the program, the president of Tunisia passed away. So this resulted in early elections. So a lot of the centers that we were supposed to be training at, we had to change them in the last minute. So this caused some logistical challenges, but we were on top of it.
And the lead-in time was quite short anyway, wasn't it? We only had a few weeks between approval from the ministry and the actual training course supposed to be starting. Yeah. Great, thank you. Wendy was involved in the course design, and she's going to tell us all about that. Can I just remind Wendy and the other presenters that you can advance your own slides? At the moment I'm doing it and I'm getting it a little bit out of sync with what you're saying. So if you want to advance your own slides when you're talking, that'd be great.
Right.
But Wendy, again, you defined
with
the training course.
The information that the British Council gave us right at the beginning, we knew that there would be mixed language proficiency amongst the teachers. There was some uncertainty about whether there'd be materials ready for grade 4. So it seemed sensible to make sure that the training empowered the teachers to be able to make their own materials, but also making their own resources, which is something extremely important that teachers need to understand. They do need teaching resources in order to, to teach any subject, but especially language, because they provide the context. And also we knew that 21st century skills were very important. The British Council value those very much, their core skills. So we needed to emphasize the importance of communication and collaboration, which of course with language is essential, but also the creativity side, using your imagination, problem solving, critical thinking, and that all had to be embedded in the training.
Now, you based the course around stories, and I just wanted to point out that in the chat box, Asma Herboum is one of the trainees who was in the picture on the previous slide. So we've got some of the trainees in the audience at the moment.
Yes.
Now, I was just saying, you based the course around stories. Why did you
carry a content
as a
and context? And what we wanted the teachers to be able to do was to create their own materials, and which were age appropriate for the children. Obviously, stories use language. Stories are universal. Every context in the world has a history of storytelling in different ways. Stories can be graded for all learners, and I think what we really wanted to be able to do was to show the teachers that a really good story always has a problem, a cause, an effect, and then a solution. So then that sort of brings out the critical thinking. The teachers develop the stories in groups, so that brings in the 21st century skills of collaboration and communication. So we're just trying to embed, basically practice what we were preaching. And also stories, you can learn the impact of stories are the visuals as well. So you can teach visual literacy as well as textual literacy. Yes. Now, could you just?
And can you run
could you just pass the next slide along, because I've got a little bit of a technical problem, that one. Thank you very much. Okay, so there were 5 days of training, which were 30 hours. So we had 6 hours a day, and the focus was very much on the natural approach of learning language. So day one was spent on listening skills, and really unpicking what listening was all about, what activities you need to use to exemplify listening skills. And then day two was the build of listening and speaking, and again lots of activities exemplifying good practice in listening and speaking. Day three, phonemic awareness, and this I'm very glad that it was mentioned earlier about Arabic. Andrew mentioned about how Arabic teaching links the letter and the symbol, the sound and the symbol. So English does exactly the same thing. And we needed to show the teachers that our symbols are sounds as well. And you need to know those sounds in order to be able to decode, so reading skills. Day four was letter formation and writing skills. And then day five was an integration of all the language skills and a presentation of their story. So if you could just show me the next slide, please, Alan. Sorry. Oh, yes.
Sure. I just want to say I was really impressed with that picture of using the sand for drawing
yes, that's very
the letters.
Montessori,
and I thought you could also turn that into a pronunciation exercise with plosives, blowing the sand away.
Yeah, and of course you could use
it's
sand
very creative,
or flour to do that.
Yes.
All right, so the course structure, yes, I just told you what happens on each day. Yeah. So we have 6 hours a day. So we broke up the day into 2-hour slots. The first session of each day focused on linguistic skill activities. The second session was modeled on a story. So what's very important for the teachers to have was what we wanted them to do ultimately, which was create their own story and then use activities for the different linguistic skills within that story. So first you need a model to follow. And so we decided to use Eric Carle's The Hungry Caterpillar, which is an interesting one because it's fiction and non-fiction. So that gives you the opportunity to go both ways. The other thing about choosing something that could be fiction and non-fiction is that sometimes there is a gender bias to certain kinds of stories. And so we wanted to make sure that the teachers understood that you could have a mixture of fiction and non-fiction within one story. And so the story was told using visual and kinesthetic resources, very important, because a story, you don't need to understand all the words. What you need to understand are the ideas. So you need to, human beings use their eyes for visual literacy. Visual literacy includes body language, being able to read body language. So we wanted to include all kinds of sort of dramatic types of activities, as well as using resources, teaching resources. Now, the teachers, when they were watching the story being told, also saw how the activities from session 1 were embedded within the story, and then they micro-taught those particular activities. So they had a practice of how you set up the linguistic skills activities, which were in session 1. And then finally, session 3 each day was done in groups, because again we want this collaborative, communicative activity. So they brainstormed topics which would make a good story for 10-year-olds, drafted an outline of a story. So it was a very clear problem, a cause, an effect, and a solution. And that's really important. That gives you a skeleton, a scaffold. And then as each linguistic skill was introduced every day, the groups added their activities and resources of their unique story so that they could practice the skills. Next slide. Yes, that's right.
So that would be for how they were inputting their own creativity.
Here are some of the resources that the trainers used for delivering the story. So there's the Hungry Caterpillar, and here are some were print, as you can see, or photographs taken from the internet. But we were also trying to model using recycled materials. As I said, earlier, it's really important. Teachers, if they're having to spend out of their own pocket to make materials, well, use recycled materials. They're easily available: carton, plastic sacking, old clothes, but also realia. So there's some examples of the trainer-made materials. Yep. All right, so there's the creativity integration. So the first part was obviously the brainstorming, and again, that's the communicative, collaborative part that we really wanted to embed. Then they wrote their own stories using this problem-solving formula. Now, quite a lot of teachers used traditional stories from Tunisia, which was fine, absolutely fine, as long as that problem-solving formula was clearly embedded in there. We also wanted teachers to practice proofreading. So we did peer proofreading. Okay, so again, this is another aspect of language learning that they could actually use in the classroom. So, I mean, what we did with the teachers, they could easily do with their students in the classroom. So there's a loop. The trainers trained the teachers using the storytelling activities, but the teachers could easily get the students to do exactly the same thing. Yeah. Then the materials were reviewed by their own group and modified. Right. So here's some example of recycled materials that the teachers were actually encouraged to bring in for their groups. Your cardboard boxes are easily available everywhere. Plastic bottles, bottle tops especially are fabulous. The plastic bottle tops, because you can write on them, as you can see there. They've got numbers, letters, and you know, each group in a classroom could have their own set. So it's the teacher modelling what they could do in the classroom. The students could bring those kind of materials in. Yeah, so here are some of the materials that the teachers actually made for their stories. So there's some exquisite writing. Just, you know, what a lovely model. Just lovely. Very simple, very clear, and then you could see the supermarket, the level that they went to creating this 3D. They had a ball making these materials. For week 1 of the training, I actually was a trainer as well, so I know what it feels like to have taken the teachers through a whole week of the training. But the creativity was unbelievable. Yes, so dealing with the language and the knowledge differences, well, the focus was very much on English language that was age appropriate for grade 4 starter students. So it's not very high. In fact, I suspect that teachers who had more language found it more difficult to grade their English than the teachers who didn't have so much language. Okay. And the steps in the activities delivered were, which we shared with the teachers, were deliberately detailed and scripted. So any of the sort of lesson plans that we shared with the teachers as a model, they could see that the steps were very, very detailed, but also exactly what they were supposed to say at each different part of the lesson was scripted. So they didn't have to think about what to say. It was already there. Now, this particular teacher training is an innovation, because not only was it teacher training, it was teacher advisor training. The two were combined. So the trainers were training the teachers, and meanwhile there were teaching advisors who were in that classroom alongside the teachers, who were also taking part in the training. It was part of their CPD as well. Yeah.
Can I bring Andrew in here for a second? Andrew, if you can come back on the screen. And can you tell us about the place of the teacher advisors?
They were appointed last September by the Ministry of Education. They've all got experience of teaching English in primary themselves. And they're people who we've been working with on planning their own continuing professional development. They've had 2 weeks of training in UK institutions as well, and so the ministry intends them to be the people who take forward training in the future once they've developed good training and mentoring skills. So I think, well, you've probably been seeing quite a lot of the comments put up by people like Olfa and Asma. And I'm sure Yahya can tell you more, but it seems that they very much appreciated working with the trainers. So I think in the first week, everything was new to everybody, but in the weeks that followed that, the relationships really developed, and the trainers and teaching advisors got on quite constructively.
Great. Maybe Wendy can tell us a little bit more about that. Wendy, what part did the teaching advisors have in the training?
Actually, so the first week that teaching advisors were with a trainer, we asked them to take an active part, because when you need to understand something really well, it's much better if you actually do it rather than just observe it. So we asked them to take an active part, and then towards the end of the week, they started to observe and reflect. So they had their own training plan. They had their own booklet where they had to reflect each day on what they had seen. So that was the first week that they were taking part in the training. And then as they took part in more and more of the training, shadowing the trainers, they took even more and more of an active part, and they were actually delivering some of the training because they knew what it was, they knew what was coming up.
Yeah, great. So, but they're starting out on their development process as trainers. They're not full-blown trainers yet. They're going to become
so they were all primary teachers, and they had all taught English, so they had the credibility to be the teaching assistants. Yes.
Great. Well, we'll come back to that topic at the end of the discussion, where we've got Yahya, who will tell us more about that from a first-hand perspective. But first, let's hear a little bit from...
Okay. Hi, Alan. Yeah, thank you very much. And hi to everybody. Well, the Teaching for Success training program was, as you obviously heard about, very carefully considered and very carefully planned. But to use these issues of being aware of the need to adapt. So, I mean, as would be the case in any country, every group was different, differing ranges of English levels and levels of experience, both in terms of subject knowledge, obviously, and in terms of how much teaching experience they'd had and in what subjects. So, for example, some teachers had never taught English before. They were perhaps maths or science specialists, whilst a few had not just taught English, but they also had masters as well. So, however, none of them had actually taught English to grade 4 children before. So this was obviously a learning curve for everybody. So on the one hand, I would say it brought in an incredible richness to the training to have this variation. But on the other hand, of course, it made it even more important to create training which would be accessible to all these different levels. So what we did was essentially we were able to adapt it because the course, the materials, the methodology we used was embedded into the program, and of course the aim of this was that there would be consistency and standardization across all different training centers and across the country. But within that there was a lot of flexibility for us trainers, so we could adapt to the specific needs and to the abilities of each group, which meant a really tailored approach was used and was able to be used by each trainer with each group. And of course, pedagogically, as we've talked about before, and Wendy's talked about specifically, using stories as a basis for training is one of the most successful and effective ways, really, to access all levels of language teaching and learning, and to engage people, as we know, all around the world. That everybody loves stories. So through the use of techniques like miming, visuals, actions, and so on, even those with a lower level of English can understand. So using a story as the basis for the training meant that we as trainers had a really solid foundation from which to adapt to the needs of each group and even to the needs of each person. So let me move on one slide there. Whoops, no, you've moved on. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, beg your pardon, of course. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, just a second.
Can I ask you before you go on, Deirdre? Before you go on, can you turn down the volume on your microphone a little bit?
Yes, of course. Well, the first thing I'd like to say here is that Tunisian teachers, is that a better volume now?
Can you give us some examples of training techniques and methods that you used?
Is that the Tunisian teachers in all centres all around the country were an absolute pleasure to work with. They were motivated. We were all really impressed. They had a palpable hunger to learn more, develop the teaching skills and so on. So actually, you know, it was a real pleasure to do this. So when we asked them initially what their expectations of the training would be on the first day, many of them obviously wanted to develop their skills, but I don't think any of them realised to what extent they would develop by the end of the training. And I think they were incredibly taken aback by how much they had developed by the end of the 5-day courses. So how do we do this? Well, first of all, the use of workshop-style training, of course. This is a key method which engaged and motivated them and involved all teachers at all levels with all of the activities, whilst also allowing them a lot of freedom to come up with their own ideas. I mean, we've talked about how creative they all were. We were so impressed by the creativity of these teachers. So the workshop format, let me just move a slide across. Whoops. The workshop format was allowed us to take each teacher, let's say, on a voyage of self-discovery and learning for their teaching development. Really, you know, we used we did different processes where sometimes they had their teachers' hats on, so therefore they were learning more about the theory of how to do these things, and sometimes they took the teachers' hats off and became students, so they could see what it would be like for their students in the classroom. So it was very engaging in that respect as well. And obviously pace and timing of activities was important to keep the momentum going and to reflect the learning, and we could reflect the learning and engagement speed of the participants that way as well. So obviously we worked in small groups within the workshop format, and this created an incredible community spirit and a bonding. So they could share best practice. They loved the whole idea of meeting up with teachers from other areas, you know, because they don't get an opportunity to do that very much. So, and also within the groups, we made it a deliberate choice to mix up the groups from different activities, different tasks. So, you know, they had a balance between bonding with their first original group and then interacting with all the participants on varying activities and working with them all to do different tasks with different groups. So this way they got maximum benefit from lots of their peers' ideas as well as just ours. So what I would also say is these workshops were very, very practical and they allowed the teachers to practice all the activities. And the training became it was like an unthreatening forum for them, really, to try their new teaching activities and their new teaching methods. Like Wendy was mentioning, micro-teaching, that's what we let them do, and they found that hugely beneficial. And of course, you know, the story, which provided the basis of the training, was used in a different way, with all the 4 skills building on each other. So that was like the practical loop approach. So everything was very practically based. And Well, I would say that, let me give you a few slides actually here. Yeah. I wanted to talk about the incredible achievements they made, but I'll go on to the challenges. No problem. So the challenges obviously were really more to do with climate and things like that. Let me just find the right thing here, just a second. You can see the engagement, the party atmosphere by the end of the week. Yeah, so the challenges. This is a picture actually taken in Sousse on the very first day of the first week of training, and this was a representative from the ministry who came down to meet us. And this links very much with the challenges because there were a lot of challenges, which I'll come to. But what we felt was that the ministry supported us hugely. You know, I mean, the gentleman that came down, he called the training historical. And so despite all the challenges, we were really supported. Now, obviously, heat was a big factor because, you know, as I'm sure you know, Tunisia is a really hot country. And, you know, during the first couple of weeks, for a couple of the days of both weeks, it hit 45 degrees. And for the teachers and the trainers, you know, a good day was 38. So, you know, when it was actually slightly cool. So you can imagine what it was like. And, of course, there was a constant need for water on that basis. And the training centres worked really hard because, you know, they had to provide enough. You know, each centre had 5 trainers in each room. There were 20 teachers or so. So it was a big task in that kind of heat. And, of course, air conditioning is always temperamental. And, you know, it wasn't always present. So, you know, but everybody kept smiling. Everybody wanted to keep going. Everybody wanted to learn. Everybody wanted to develop. So despite the challenges, you know, it was just the most uplifting experience for everybody. Yes, of course. I've got a picture of some of them from the centre that I worked in. We were really delighted to be able to work with them, and we were also really impressed with their commitment, their enthusiasm to their own learning and their own development, and how much they put themselves into, you know, all this work. They were so cooperative, and they were really supportive to us. Of course, we had a TA assigned to our training in each training room, and as Wendy's also mentioned, they had their own training and development program, which again, like the training for the teachers, was able to be tailored to each person according to their needs, which was just fantastic. So each trainer worked closely with their TA to plan how they could be involved in the training, and we gave them, you know, oral feedback, and we worked really closely as a team, really, and written feedback at the end of the week to help them learn and develop. And it was great for us trainers because we watched them grow in confidence in their own abilities and their own knowledge, and also we encouraged them to write reflection notes, which was another important growth method for them, and enabled them to see how they were improving on a daily basis, which was really motivational for them. And obviously, as Wendy said, we started with active observation and shadowing, and then they moved up to doing small parts of the training, that's warmers, single activities. And then after they'd been training for a number of weeks, or rather with us for a number of weeks, they developed into doing larger parts of the training. So it was really useful for us to have the TAs. They were obviously very knowledgeable, of course, about the educational context in Tunisia. So, you know, it was definitely a two-way process. I mean, it wasn't just them learning from us, but us learning from them too. And it really enriched the quality of our own training too. Absolutely. I mean, this was one of the great things, you know, because it was so practically based. Of course, all the teachers had takeaways. You know, by the end of the week, not only did they have the caterpillar story and all the activities that we've been through with them on a practical basis, and they practiced micro-teaching, but they had their own stories that they had all created, and that was an incredible thing for their self-esteem as well. You know, at the beginning of the week, they had no idea that they would be able to write their own story that was graded to an age group that they'd not taught English before to either. So, you know, by the end of the week, they were just amazed by what they'd achieved. So they had these stories, this bank of stories, and this bank of activities that they'd built covering all 4 skills around each of the stories. And then, of course, on the last day also, they went around and had a look at the stories in the other groups. You remember I said there were 5 groups. So they went around and exchanged ideas and stories and activities with their peers. So it was an incredibly enriching experience. You're welcome.
Great, thanks very much, Deirdre. And we're going to move on to Yahya next, who's one of the teaching advisors that we've been talking about. So Yahya, as a teaching advisor, how was the course beneficial to you?
The course was very beneficial for us. Well, the key word where I want to start with is the word confidence, because we moved to a whole new level of confidence after this summer camp. You know, we are the first generation of teacher advisors in Tunisia in the primary schools. We didn't have any previous groups of TAs to help us or senior trainers to help us in Tunisia. And we received a lot of theoretical training in United Kingdom and in Tunisia, especially with the British Council. And that was very important, of course, but it was nothing compared to the summer camp because it was hands-on training for us. We were there with the trainers and with the trainees, also the teachers. You know, during the last year, we we delivered some workshops with teachers, but we had lots of questions and we didn't know how to connect what we were learning theoretically to the practice inside the classroom. Now we had this golden opportunity to shadow an experienced trainer. We watched them as they delivered sessions, and then incrementally we delivered bigger bits of the program, and they helped us through the whole week. And now we are more confident about ourselves as teaching advisors. Our attitudes towards the whole job has changed, because in the past we were, kind of, okay, let me speak about myself. I would go to the room to prove that I am a TA. Now to show that I speak English well and that I know lots of games and techniques. Now we after this camp, we understood that we have to keep it simple. The important thing is to get the message across, to bond with, to build rapport with these trainees, and we learned how to be comfortable inside the classroom, how to do our job properly.
That's great. Now, I noticed that Andrew posted a link to the British Council CPD Framework for teacher educators. In terms of that framework, how do you see that you have developed during this program?
I'm using my mobile, so I can't see.
So yeah, the Professional Development Framework, the British Council Teacher Educator Professional Development Framework. You talked before about moving from foundation stage.
We moved from foundation stage to engagement stage. At first, we were relying on our own experience as teachers in classrooms in order to do our job. But after this summer camp, I believe that we moved to the engagement phase, where we developed our skills throughout practical experience and professional learning. Now we look forward, of course, maybe into more opportunities in order to move to the higher phase, which is integration.
Yeah, great. And how was it? What was it about the comments and feedback from the trainers that was most effective for you?
The feedback was a very important part for me and for my colleagues, because we were receiving feedback from the trainers who watched us when we deliver parts of the program, and that means that the feedback was very realistic. It was fresh. It was like 1 or 2 hours after we delivered these sessions. It was very constructive for us. These trainers were very nice to us in the way they give us feedback. They were very professional, and we ourselves learned how to give feedback to teachers. This feedback helped us to reflect on our practices and change some behaviors or some techniques in order to develop our capabilities. And from 1 week to another, we felt that we are moving forward thanks to this feedback, which was mostly positive. The trainers were very careful not to, they were careful about, they were trying to encourage us, so they gave us more positive feedback, if we can say 3 stars and wish each time. They were focusing more on our, they were trying to make us look at our strengths or strong side, and at the same time think about developing our areas for development.
Great. And so From your perspective then, what do you think were the main learning points for you as a TA?
Can you repeat that question?
And the teacher. Yes, sure. What do you think were the main learning points for you from this course?
I think the most important learning point for us are how to prepare for a workshop, how to conduct the workshop, and how to assess yourself and reflect on your practices after the workshop. Now we know how to prepare materials. Even sometimes, Tunisia is a middle income country. Sometimes in the rural areas or in some cases you can't find materials. So we know how to prepare materials, how to conduct workshops, how to deal with unexpected situations. Sometimes, you have different kinds of trainees. We learned lots of things in terms of assessing ourselves and reflecting on our practices. And also we learned many things in terms of games, songs, techniques, classroom management, time management, many things.
Mm-hmm. And what differences did you see in the teachers that were part of your training groups?
I think the teachers also learned a lot from this summer camp, and we can see this on the field when we visit schools in this period, because teachers now feel that this project is huge, and they, last year we tried to talk to them about this project. We told them that Teaching for Success Tunisia is a huge project, and it is a serious thing now. There is a serious change about the position of the English language in the Tunisian schools, because we are a francophone country, and the teachers were only hearing stories from us, but now they saw it themselves with all these trainers and with all the logistical and all the it's a huge project. They have been there and they saw that they are part of a big thing, a big change that is taking place in Tunisia. We believe and we hope that English language in Tunisia will be as important as it should be, because it will open the door for the new generations, for the international markets in terms of computer science, marketing, tourism. So the teachers now themselves, they are very more confident about their job, even the ones who don't hold a university degree in English, thanks to the grading of language that the trainers did. And now the teachers think that even if they are not very skilled in English language, they can still do their job and they can simplify the task for themselves. They can prepare their own materials. And I believe that one of the most important things is that the teachers now, they discovered actually for the first time that they can craft their own stories, they can make their own activities, they can sequence the activities and prepare a whole lesson or a whole unit of learning themselves based on a set of vocabulary that they are aiming to teach, and based on the Tunisian context, on the interests of 10-year-old kids. They can prepare their own materials and teach independently, even if they don't have a book or they don't have enough training.
Great, thanks very much, Yahya. I think that really gives us a very comprehensive overview of what the program looked like, and some very detailed information from you as a course participant and trainer. That was fantastic. We've got 5 minutes left. Are there any questions from anyone in the chat box? I mean, we're talking there about differences in the trainees. Deirdre, I think I cut you off a little bit earlier on in the interest of time, but if you wanted to add a comment or two about the...
Hi, yeah, sorry. Yes, I get a bit carried away because it was such a great experience for everybody. So, no, I mean, we were talking about, I think I was talking about scaffolding, something like that, and how we built self-esteem as well as skills and teaching methods and so on through this sort of process. I mean, the whole program was built to scaffold knowledge and built to scaffold development of learning through adding a skill each day, obviously. And, this actually, they built the activities around the story for each skill, one on top of the other. So therefore it was really obvious to the teachers how much they were developing each day. Their awareness of the development of the story, of the skills and things that they were using each day. And we were also facilitators for their creativity as well. You know, I think we were also impressed with that, and all of their ideas, their visuals that they created. You know, even those that hadn't actually taught English, they were perhaps maths or science specialists. You know, they came in with all these wonderful little glove puppets and things that they made out of cardboard and coloured, and it was just incredible. And I think the big difference for them, and a lot of the teachers commented to me, was that, you know, the training was practically based. And that was so valuable for them because they could see that the story they wrote themselves, that they were working on every day gradually during the week, the activities they built around it, and the Caterpillar story and all the input that we'd given them was something that they could use within a couple of weeks in the school. You know, it was not theoretical, it was practical. I mean, they're actually very knowledgeable. They're very, you know, they know a lot of the theory. But the difference is moving from the theory into the practice. And, you know, they went away with lots and lots of resources and lots of materials that they could use that term, which, you know, was just fabulous for them. So... yeah.
We're seeing a lot of positive comments in the chat box, and one from Tony is about the fact that teachers who are not actually teaching English yet, but will be.
Well, that's great. I mean, all these things are transferable. I mean, even the story itself, you know, the 100
subjects. So your maths and your science teachers
Caterpillar was cross-curricular. You know, the whole life cycle of the caterpillar into the butterfly and so on. You know, so they obviously recognise that these are things that you can take, these kind of techniques and the activities you can take to any subject, really.
Absolutely. Not seeing any questions coming up in the chat box. So if anybody else on the panel would like to comment on the experience and any final comments before we shut you all down in about a minute. I'd just like to say, from our perspective at TransformELT, we've been absolutely delighted to work with all the huge number of trainers. I think it was somewhere around 50 people total that were involved.
And it's not the end, is it?
Although it was 1 week training for the Tunisian teachers, it went on for a total of about 6 weeks with a 1 week holiday in the middle. So, in fact, I think it went on for 7 weeks total.
Yeah.
That's not the end. No, we're having a similar, not the same scale, but we are going to have a larger training event quite soon, hopefully, depending on ministry approval. So, long may the program continue.
Well,
I hope we
thank you all so much. What a successful professional development program for teachers in Tunisia. I thought that the high level of collaboration was so key to the success of this program, and in addition, it was wonderful to see how well the program was able to bridge theory to practice and provide so many hands-on activities that could be applied to the classroom. So I believe this is a model that I hope will inspire more high-quality training programs in other countries and contexts. So congratulations to everyone on this panel, and thank you for sharing your experiences with us. It was really a pleasure. I think everyone got a lot from it. So thank you all. Let's give a round of applause in the chat box. And now it is time, I think, for a 5-minute break. Thank you.